The night was ordinary until my phone buzzed with a notification. A voice memo unexpected from my brother. I hesitated, thumb hovering over the play button. We weren't close anymore. Years of unspoken resentment had driven a wedge between us. Still curiosity won. I tapped play. At first it was silence. Then his voice filled my room, low and deliberate, as though he were speaking to someone intimate. Our mother. Mom, you know she'll never succeed. She's weak. Always pretending to be strong, but she'll collapse the moment life pushes her. Honestly, I don't even think she deserves what she has. Maybe it's time we finally put her in her place. The words sliced through me like glass. My heart dropped. My own brother, someone I once trusted with my secrets, was plotting my downfall. And worse, he had no idea I had just heard every poisonous thought. My chest tightened. I replayed the memo, each word carving deeper. Weak. Doesn't deserve what she has. He wasn't just talking behind my back, he was scheming against me. And the part that burned most, our mother's silence. He spoke so comfortably, so certain she would agree. I wanted to confront him immediately, but my instincts stopped me. If he could betray me like this, I had to be smarter. Bursting into his room in anger would only feed his narrative, that I was fragile, impulsive, predictable. No, if he thought I was weak, I'd let him keep believing that until I decided it was time for revenge. I started watching him closely. Subtle things I once brushed off began to look sinister now. The way he always forgot to tell me about family gatherings until the last minute. The way he'd borrow my things and claim them as his own. Even how he subtly whispered to relatives about how I wasn't doing well. My life, I realized, had been the canvas for his manipulation all along. For days I pretended nothing had happened. I smiled at him at breakfast, nodded when he spoke, laughed when he tried to be charming. But inside, a storm was brewing. I began recording my own memos, this time of him. Little conversations, casual words twisted into proof of his deceit. If he wanted to destroy me with whispers, I would destroy him with his own voice. The opportunity came faster than I expected. He invited a few friends over one evening. I stayed in my room, door cracked just enough to hear them. That's when I caught it. Him bragging about how easily he could break me, if he wanted to. How he'd already started planting seeds in Mom's head about my supposed failures. I pressed record. His ladder, his arrogance, his pride in tearing me down. It was all there. When his friends left, I stared at my phone, heart pounding. The evidence was undeniable. I could expose him right now, play the memo for the whole family, and end his little game. But no, revenge needed patience. He deserved to crumble piece by piece, the way he had tried to make me crumble. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, planning. He thought I didn't know. He thought I was still the sister too naive to see the dagger in his hand. But soon, very soon, he would learn that the quietest revenge is the one that waits until the victim smiles back at you. Right before they strike. And my first strike would begin tomorrow. The narrator has caught her brother's betrayal and begun plotting revenge, recording evidence against him. Tomorrow marks the beginning of her first move. Dawn came like a held breath. I moved through the house like a ghost, quiet, deliberate, while the world still slept. My brother's mug sat in the sink, the lipstick stain on the rim still faint. His keys were on the hall table. I took them, palms steady, and slipped into the garage with my phone tucked against my chest. The first move had to be invisible. He'd built a life of small cruelties, whispering doubts, shifting blame, rewriting memories. Each was a thread. Tonight I'd begin to pull them apart. I opened his laptop, he'd never set a password, and found what I expected. Spreadsheets of money transfers, lists of favors he'd asked relatives to do, a draft message he'd saved titled, "When She Goes." My stomach churned. He had been laying the groundwork for something far worse than gossip. I copied everything. Then I planted a breadcrumb trail to make sure he'd notice. In the pantry, I moved a tin of tea to the front where he always kept it. I left a page from his ledger on the kitchen counter, the inked numbers visible as if accidentally revealed. Small things to prick his ego, to make him think someone was watching. He loved control. A suggestion that control could be slipping would send him into patterns I could predict. At breakfast he was glowing, oblivious. His voice was smooth, the same one that had sounded so comfortable in the voice memo. He spoke about work, about how our mother had been worried lately. He didn't know I'd heard the exact way he framed it. I smiled and listened, the way you pretend you don't hear thunder in the distance. Later, I doctored a message on his phone, a careful edit of an innocent text that, taken out of context, sounded like a confession. I saved it as a draft and placed the phone back where he'd left it. Then I sent a quiet prayer to whatever dark corner of the universe answers desperate wishes. My plan was not to ruin him in public. That would be too crude, too fast. Instead, I wanted to wedge doubt into his relationships the way he'd wedged doubt into mine. I sent anonymous messages to a cousin who'd always been close to him. Small lies, fabricated evidence, screenshots I'd made look authentic. It was surgical, a suggestion that he had been siphoning family funds, that he'd been telling half-truths to manipulate decisions. I watched from the dining room as the cousin's face tightened, while texting replies I couldn't see. The first crack showed up within hours. A cousin I'd always trusted called our mother, voice thin with betrayal. "Are you sure about the transfers? He promised they'd be for the renovation." Mom's voice, cautious and small, trembled as she denied knowledge. I let the pause between their sentences hang like a noose. My brother paced, charm gone, replaced by a brittle anger. He tried to control the conversation, to explain away numbers and receipts and the innocuous spreadsheets. His words, which once slithered into ears with ease, now fell on suspicious faces. He accused, he begged. He laughed too loudly to prove normalcy. But when people begin to search for the truth, charm is paper thin. That night I sat at my window and listened to the house breathe. My brother slammed drawers in the kitchen, the sound like someone practicing violence. I could hear him shouting on the phone, the kind of rage that tries to disguise fear. The scent of his cigarette drifted up from the porch, a nervous habit I'd never noticed before. I loaded the memo I'd recorded earlier and listened to it once more, his laughter over the plan to put me in my place. The irony tasted like salt. I knew he would retaliate. He always did. He would try to frame me, to flip the narrative, to turn sympathy into suspicion against me. He was clever, he had friends who were loyal to him, and he knew where the family's soft spots were. If I wanted to win, I needed a second line of defense, irrefutable proof that couldn't be gaslit away. So I prepared a trap. The ledger copy I'd saved would be leaked, but only after I secured one more thing: an eyewitness. Someone who would corroborate the private conversations, someone my brother couldn't charm or buy off. I thought of the younger neighbor who'd once seen him arguing in the backyard, of the shopkeeper who'd noticed the strange late-night pickups. People who had no reason to lie. I left at midnight, cold air slicing at my face. My chest pounded in tempo with my footsteps. I walked to the corner shop, borrowed the neighbor's presence with a casual knock, and asked questions that sounded innocent. As the neighbor spoke, hesitant, then certain, I recorded it. Their voice, truthful and raw, would be the proof I needed. When I returned home, I found my brother waiting in the living room, eyes red, hands trembling. He held his phone like a talisman. "Who have you been talking to?" he demanded. His voice was a broken thing. For the first time in years I saw through the facade, not cruelty but panic. The predator had caught a glimpse of the claws beneath the prey's skin. I set my phone on the table and smiled. "I've been listening," I said simply. He knows someone is listening. Panic replaces his arrogance. The narrator reveals she has evidence, and a witness, and the brother's next move could expose everything. His face twitched when I said it. "I've been listening." The words seemed to puncture something in him. For the first time, my brother wasn't the smooth manipulator, the charming liar who controlled every narrative. He was cornered, and he knew it. But predators don't retreat without clawing back. He leaned forward, eyes narrowing into slits. "You think you're clever. You've always been pathetic at playing games. You're not built for this." His voice trembled, but the venom was still there. I didn't respond. Silence unnerved him more than words. I watched as he raked his fingers through his hair, pacing the room like a trapped animal. The walls, the ceiling, the shadows, they all seemed to close in around him. He stopped suddenly. "Delete whatever you have," he hissed. "Or I swear I'll make sure you regret even breathing." Threats. Predictable. I tilted my head and tapped my phone screen. His own voice echoed through the living room, his laughter, his pride in tearing me down, his plan to put me in my place. The sound bounced off the walls, every syllable wrapping around him like chains. He lunged, trying to snatch the phone from my hand. I stepped back, calm, as if I had rehearsed this 100 times. "It's not just here," I said. "There are backups. Messages, witnesses. Try to take me down and you'll go with me?" His face drained of color. He knew I wasn't bluffing. The following days were a dance of shadows. He avoided me at times, but at others he tried to fake normalcy, smiling too wide at breakfast, asking hollow questions about my day. I played along, but my eyes never left his. I wanted him to feel it. The paranoia, the uncertainty, the same poison he'd fed me for years. Meanwhile, I spread the cracks further. Another anonymous message slipped into the family's chat group. Screenshots of his so-called financial plans, with just enough redacted to look authentic but damning. Relatives began calling, asking questions he couldn't answer without contradicting himself. Every lie he told became another snare tightening around his throat. One evening, I overheard him on the phone, voice shaking. "No, I don't know who's sending them. It's not me. She wouldn't." He cut himself off, realizing he'd said too much. I smiled in the dark. His web was unraveling, but something shifted. The following night, I returned home late and found my bedroom door ajar. My desk was ransacked, drawers pulled open, papers scattered across the floor. He had been searching, hunting for evidence. My stomach coiled, But then I noticed something else. On the bed, a folded note in his handwriting. You won't win. Blood is thicker than lies. Remember that. For the first time, a chill crawled down my spine. This wasn't just rivalry anymore. He was desperate, and desperation makes people dangerous. So I accelerated my plan. The next day I arranged a chance meeting with our mother. I played the role of the quiet, wounded child, asking her about loyalty, about whether she ever doubted people she trusted. Then, casually, I slipped my phone into her hands and pressed play. The memo, the one where my brother sneered about me being weak, undeserving, spilled into the room. Her expression froze. She didn't speak for a long moment, and I thought, just for a second, that she might deny it, excuse him the way mothers often excuse their favorite child. But when she finally lifted her eyes to mine, I saw something fracture in her. Not disbelief, not confusion. She whispered, "He sent me that too?" The world tilted. My heart crashed against my ribs. My brother hadn't just been poisoning her with lies. He'd been proud enough to share them directly with her, expecting her agreement. Which meant the betrayal wasn't just his. I stared at her, the silence between us a gaping wound, and in that silence, a terrifying thought struck me. What if she had agreed with him all along? The narrator learns their mother also received the cruel memo, and her reaction, hence she might have silently sided with the brother. The betrayal cuts deeper than imagined. Her words clung to me like smoke. He sent me that too. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. My mother's face was a mask, her eyes hollow as if she had been carrying this secret weight for far too long. The betrayal didn't just belong to my brother, it belonged to her silence, her complicity. My knees weakened, but I steadied myself. If I faltered now, he would win. They both would. I leaned closer, searching her expression. "And what did you say to him?" My voice was razor thin. She didn't answer. She didn't have to. The silence told me everything. She hadn't defended me. She hadn't pushed back against his venom. She had let him plant the poison and watched it spread. That was when my heart hardened. Revenge was no longer just about him. It was about her too. That night I stayed awake at my desk, crafting my final move. I gathered the memos, the recordings, the screenshots, the ledger copies. I compiled it all into a single file, neatly organized, impossible to dispute. Then, with trembling fingers, I scheduled an email to every relative, every family friend, even my mother's closest circle. The subject line was simple. The truth you were never supposed to hear. The send button waited like a loaded gun. But I wasn't finished. Timing mattered. My brother had a family dinner planned that weekend. His attempt to smooth things over, to rebuild the trust that was slipping through his hands. Everyone would be there, including my mother. It was the perfect stage. The night of the dinner, the atmosphere was strained. Laughter sounded brittle, conversations stuttered. My brother was in performance mode, smiling too much, pouring drinks, trying to command the room. My mother sat stiff, her eyes darting between us like she was waiting for an explosion. And I gave it to her, halfway through his toast, his voice dripping with false sincerity. Everyone's phones buzzed at once. Notifications lit the room like sparks in dry grass. One by one, faces shifted from confusion to horror. The air thickened as my brother's own voice filled the space, mocking me, plotting against me, laughing about his lies. The evidence of his financial schemes followed. Then, the testimonies I'd gathered. Proof layered on proof until denial became impossible. He froze mid-sentence, wine glass trembling in his hand.
It's fake. She's lying,"
he stammered, but the recordings kept playing, merciless, undeniable. And then all eyes turned to my mother. I hadn't edited out her silence. In one memo, he laughed about how, "Evan, mom knows she's weak," and her lack of protest was deafening. The truth landed heavier than any words I could have spoken. She had known, and she had let it fester. The room erupted, questions, accusations, shouts. My brother's mask shattered completely. He raged, cursed, begged, tried to snatch phones out of hands. But the evidence was everywhere now, woven into dozens of devices impossible to erase. I sat in silence, watching the empire of lies he had built collapse in real time. Watching the pedestal my mother had put him on crack beneath her feet. For the first time, it wasn't me under the microscope. It was them. By the end of the night, my brother stormed out, face pale, reputation in ashes. My mother didn't move. She couldn't look at me. When the guests left, the silence between us was colder than any winter. "You wanted me to be weak," I whispered to the empty room. "But weakness doesn't destroy people. Silence does." I walked upstairs, leaving her in the ruins. My phone buzzed with messages. Cousins thanking me for the truth, relatives apologizing for believing his lies, friends calling me brave. None of it mattered in that moment. What mattered was the quiet satisfaction humming inside me. He had tried to break me, but in the end I broke them both. And as I lay in bed, the taste of victory sharp but bittersweet, one final thought echoed in my mind: revenge doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers in the dark, until the whole world finally hears it.